Because of the work I do with respect to conflict negotiation and dialogue, people often ask me, why are American politics so polarized? If you've ever wondered, how did American politics become so divisive? Stick around. At the end of this video, I will give you 5 key reasons why our politics are polarized and gridlocked. Let's start first with the challenge of party politics. Now, you might be thinking,
hold on, Bob Bordone. It can't be the case that party politics have led to this level of polarization.
I mean, we've had parties as long as the Republic has existed. Well, that's true enough. It's also true that from the earliest days of the Republic, parties have been seen as dangerous.
This is dangerous.
Indeed, in his farewell address to the American people, our founding father, the first president, George Washington, said this, quote, "However political parties may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion." I gotta tell you, when I read that quote, I get shivers down my spine for how prescient it is.
Whoa, chills. Anybody else get chills?
Why have political parties contributed to polarization? So it has a lot to do with the way that candidates find their way to the general election ballot. In most jurisdictions, in order to be on a ballot, you have to first win your party's primary. The challenge is the folks who tend to be involved in primary elections are often pretty different from the everyday voter, and they are different in predictable ways that actually increase polarization. Typically, those who follow the primary process and who are engaged in party politics are more partisan and more polarized in their views than the average voter. So what that means is that in order to win your party's primary, if you are a Republican, you pivot to the right. And if you are a Democrat, you pivot to the left. Now, traditionally, once you win your party's primary, you then kind of shift toward the middle. But changes in the overall polarization of our electorate have incentivized some candidates to not pivot to the center, but rather to work hard to build up their most extreme base. The result? Increased polarization. 2 examples, one on each side of the political fence, exist in my home state of Massachusetts. So my congresswoman is Ayanna Pressley. In 2018, she decided to challenge her fellow Democratic incumbent, the longtime Mike Capuano, for the Democratic nomination. Both Pressley and Capuano held views characteristic of the left wing of the Democratic Party. But Pressley was able to position herself sufficiently to the left of Capuano to unseat him. Now, because my congressional district is in a comfortable Democratic area, I live in the same city as Harvard, MIT, and other liberal universities, it would be nearly impossible for any Republican to win an election there. Let's take an example on the other side of the political divide. Massachusetts Republican Governor Charlie Baker has been a largely popular and successful governor in a very blue Democratic state. Unlike many Republicans, though, Baker did not support Donald Trump. He handled COVID-19 based on science, and he would likely have won a 2022 election had he chosen to run. However, the head of the Republican Party in Massachusetts is a Donald Trump acolyte who has sparred with Baker. And recently, Baker decided not to pursue a 3rd term as governor. While at this writing it's pretty unclear who the Republican nominee will be, it is almost certain that anyone who is likely to emerge from the Republican Party will be farther to the right than Baker. It's unlikely that any such nominee would win a statewide race in Massachusetts. The point here, the party has and will be more polarized. So as polarization grows, there becomes more pressure for the political parties to fly the flag of partisans. And so the cycle actually worsens in this negative and vicious way.
It's all bad.
Let's turn now to the second reason for polarization, which is partisan gerrymandering. So first, what is gerrymandering? Well, it's a practice for drawing an electoral district in such a way as to give a particular political party an advantage. The name actually comes from Governor Elbridge Gerry. Gerry was governor of Massachusetts in 1812, and he created a partisan district in Boston in the shape of a mythical salamander. Now, even though at the time of his death, Gerry was Vice President of the United States, he has become known not for holding the second highest office in the land, but rather for creating a strangely shaped partisan voting district.
Sounds like a creative solution.
So, how has gerrymandering contributed to polarization? Here's how. Under the Constitution, every decade, the United States conducts a census, and it then uses that to apportion the 435 seats in the House of Representatives. Once each state has its allocated number of seats, state legislatures take to writing up the borders of the congressional districts. And here is where things get tricky. because state legislators often draw districts in ways that ensure that someone from their party will always win the congressional seat.
It just seems so unfair.
To be clear, both the Democrats and the Republicans will do this, and they often work in concert with each other to preserve their own seats. So how does that create more polarization? Let's go back to my congressional district. The way my district is written in Massachusetts, there's virtually no chance that a Republican, even the most moderate and reasonable, could ever win in a general election, no matter who the Democrat was. Practically speaking, then, it means the real election is not at the time of the general election, but during the primary. And remember what I said earlier about political parties? Parties are more likely to produce extreme ideological candidates. So, without the worry that an ideologically extreme candidate might lose the general election, it makes it just easier for folks on the left in the Democratic Party, or folks on the right in the Republican Party, to challenge a sitting member of Congress to win their seat. The result? Even more polarization and more extremism in the halls of Congress. The story of why American politics are so polarized couldn't be complete without next talking about the almighty role of money in politics. And in today's politics, sadly, raising money is actually much more important than formulating good policy. In order to make a credible run for office, you need to either be independently wealthy and willing to finance your own campaign, or you need to know how to raise a lot of money. And you know what the best way to raise money is? It's to appeal to the most engaged folks on your side of the political aisle. And guess who they are? They are typically the most ideological and opinionated, the very ones who are engaged in party politics and have a big stake in a certain issue and in certain outcomes.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, because it requires so much money to run a political campaign, future leaders find themselves spending enormous amounts of time raising money with folks who have strong views and strong agendas on particular issues. These donors then expect payback when the candidate takes office, promoting more polarization. What's worse is even when fundraising with low-level donors, there is a fundraising advantage to those who can use fear of the opposition as a way to raise funds. That's why whenever there's a new Supreme Court ruling on, let's say, abortion, both the pro-life and the pro-choice side exploit the decision to raise money, either to celebrate their win or to prevent further losses. A fourth reason for polarization is social media, sites like Twitter and Facebook. Social media makes it really easy for citizens to curate cocoons of comfort, entire worlds where everyone thinks alike. Within this space, there continue at times to be demagogues who will use the platforms to sow seeds of division and anger. And this leads to the last reason for political polarization, which is anger and apathy. Throughout most of the period from the 1990s through to the early 2000s, political leaders of both parties promised and failed to deliver to average Americans on issues from economic security to healthcare to national security. The 9/11 terrorist attacks, the inaction following Katrina, the continued decline in many Americans' way of life, all this led to a deep cynicism, anger, and apathy with respect to the possibility and promise that politics could produce a better way of governing that could protect us from a dangerous and turbulent world. And when the pace of change in the world outpaced political leaders' ability to adapt, many citizens became both angry and really apathetic about the future. And anger and apathy are great ingredients for polarization. They open up doubt about a course of consensus and dialogue and instead goad people to stand up more strongly for their own side. In this case, the anger and the apathy led to everything from the Tea Party movement to the Occupy Wall Street movement to the modern-day Republican Party to the modern-day Democratic Party. Polarized thinking that suggests that the other is the enemy and that the problem rests with the other side fuels apathy and anger. And this fuels polarization more. So with all of this, what can be done to address these causes of polarization in American politics? First, I encourage you to choose engagement and listening over checking out and demonization. Second, work to broaden your own social media cocoons of comfort. So that can really look like intentionally trying to follow people on social media who you wouldn't ordinarily agree with, or even cultivating relationships with people on the other side of the political fence. Finally, whenever you feel a certain fear that makes you feel that your side is right and the other side is wrong, just take a moment to remember that the hardest issues that our country is facing, issues like healthcare, immigration, national security, none of those issues fall into very easy or simple answers. All of them are complex, they're nuanced, they take time, energy, and a lot of thought to understand fully. So take a deep breath, try really hard not to let the fear overwhelm you, and remember that we really are stronger together as a country than we are divided. So to keep on learning more about these issues, watch my video, How Does Political Polarization Lead to Gridlock in Congress? In addition, if you want to learn more about how to have more productive, difficult conversations with people with whom you might disagree with on politics, check me out on the Cambridge Negotiation Institute or at bobbordone.com. I'm Bob Bordone, thanks for hanging out with me, and let's keep on negotiating. Here's the video on gridlock. It's super exciting.